I'm Mar, and this is my opinion. While the backbone of the industry now, there was a time when movie sequels weren't commonplace. They were produced, but were usually viewed as inferior cash-ins, although some were excellently made, and debatedly better than their predecessors.
Released in 1980, The Empire Strikes Back is a sequel to George Lucas's 1977 blockbuster and the second entry in the Star Wars saga. Taking place 3 years after the previous film, Empire follows Luke and company as they continue their struggle against the Empire. Luke begins his Jedi training under wise Master Yoda, while Han and Leia develop a romantic bond while avoiding Darth Vader, who wishes to use them as bait to capture Luke before turning him to the dark side of the Force. The film builds to an emotional, well-paced climax, featuring one of the best twists in cinematic history. Pre-production began in the wake of the first film's success, with Lucas financing the film independently to avoid sharing creative rights with 20th Century Fox. The young filmmaker bankrolled production personally, supplementing his Episode 3 profits with a bank loan. Since his health had been threatened on Star Wars from work overload, George took a step back with the sequel, focusing on producing and delegating writing and directing to others. Directing fell to veteran Irvin Kershner. While he initially declined, having no interest in special effects movies, he was eventually won over by Lucas. Producer Gary Kurtz was initially reluctant for Lucas to hand over directing duties, but conceded because Lucas trusted Kershner. Kershner was determined to have the script focus on characterization, spending several months pushing the writers towards humanizing the characters to his satisfaction. According to RoboCop director Paul Verhoeven in a 2012 interview, he was under consideration for the director's chair early in production, as the producers were impressed by his film Soldier of Orange. Paul was called into a meeting, during which he screened his newest film, Spetters. The producers never called him back.
While I haven't found any other source to confirm this claim, it does make me wonder how Empire would have turned out with Verhoeven in the director's chair, mainly due to the RoboCop connection. It may have failed, but beautifully so.
Taking a cue from classic epics, Kershner wanted the Alliance members to speak with American accents and the Imperial officers to have British accents. Doing so not only made it easier for the audience to separate the two sides, but made the film a Revolutionary War analogy. However, many of the rebel extras had to be dubbed in post, as many were played by Brits. Following a basic outline from Lucas, Leigh Brackett began to work on the screenplay. Unfortunately, she only completed one draft before succumbing to cancer. The search was on for a new writer to pick up the revisions. Based on the strength of 2 unsold scripts, Steven Spielberg convinced Lucas to meet with Lawrence Kasdan, who was a novice at the time. Kasdan wrote the subsequent drafts, capturing the spirit of Empire's predecessor while improving on dialogue and characterization. Production went over budget and behind schedule, and a rough cut played incoherently. This forced Lucas to entrench himself deeper into the project. He went on location to directly oversee filming, even directing several sequences. At one point, the bank threatened to pull his loan, but Fox intervened in exchange for more money. Luckily for Lucas, he didn't lose his sequel or merchandising rights, but it did lead to Alan Ladd Jr.'s eventual resignation as studio president. While a first cut played disastrously, extensive reshoots and a long post-production shaped Empire into a coherent film. While saved from financial ruin, the work strained Lucas's health, marriage, and relationships with Kershner and Kurtz. He divorced several years later, and he never worked with Kurtz again. Although they had begrudgingly allowed it with the first film, the writer and directors guilds took umbrage with Lucas using the Flash Gordon-inspired credits again. They attempted to block Empire's release, and then fined Lucas and Kershner when that was unsuccessful. Lucas paid all the fines himself before dropping out of both guilds, as well as the Motion Picture Association of America, a move which impacted casting choices on future Star Wars films. Outdoor Hoth scenes were filmed in Finse, Norway. Even though she wasn't scheduled for the shoot, Carrie Fisher traveled there anyway. At one point, a fierce storm trapped the cast and crew inside their hotel. Not wanting to waste the moment, Kershner filmed the scene where Luke wanders through the snow after escaping the Wampa Cave, sending Hamill outside, while he and a cameraman filmed from the lobby. Norwegian mountain rescue skiers were used for Echo-based troops. In exchange for their participation, Lucasfilm donated to the Norwegian Red Cross. Because the skiers didn't speak English, second unit director Peter MacDonald had to pantomime his direction, pointing towards the enemy and how they should recoil while firing. Lucas insisted on including an ice planet battle, feeling that it was easy for the special effects team to hide errors and rush certain elements against a black space backdrop. Cheating, in a sense. With a white background, the team would have to work harder to make errors undetectable. and the effects would be much more impressive. His insistence paid off, as the special effects look crisper than in Star Wars. Even into principal production, the crew was unsure if Alec Guinness would reprise his role, as the renowned actor had just had an eye operation and wasn't pleased with his character's original fate. In exchange for a quarter percentage point, he relented and filmed his scenes in one day. As Kenobi had been killed off in Star Wars, Yoda was created to give Luke a new Jedi Master to complete his training. Drawing from the creature with strange powers archetype, Yoda was designed by makeup artist Stuart Freeborn, who based the Jedi's face on an amalgamation of Albert Einstein and himself. Lucas originally approached friend Jim Henson to operate the puppet, but he turned the part down as he was filming The Great Muppet Caper. On his recommendation, Lucas offered the role to Frank Oz, who gladly accepted. In order to accommodate Oz and his assistants, the Dagobah set was elevated, allowing the four to control the Yoda puppet from below. Mark Hamill wore an earpiece so he could hear Oz's voice work and act off him. Numerous times Kershner would give direction to the puppet by mistake, only for Oz to correct him. I like to think that he did it in the Yoda voice. Whenever Hamill was having trouble with the Dagobah scenes, Oz would bring out the Miss Piggy puppet to make him laugh. Lucas was so impressed by Oz's performance in the final film that he spent thousands of dollars on an Oscar campaign to get the puppeteer a nomination for Best Supporting Actor. The Academy ignored the ads, feeling that a puppeteer wasn't an actor. Lucas felt this was unfair, but Oz didn't care. To be fair, Oz's performance would fall under voice acting, an award I feel the Academy should honor with its own category. It's only sensible, since they refused to nominate vocal performances for the main awards, yet designated one specifically for animated films. Jeremy Bulloch, the actor inside the Boba Fett costume, was called in to play an Imperial guard when an extra fell ill. He's seen in the final film as the guard who's taken captive by Lando's men while escorting Princess Leia. While not mentioned in the film, Vader's meditation chamber is supposed to be a hyperbaric chamber, the differing air pressure allowing the Sith Lord to remove his helmet and breathe normally. Originally, an additional breathing mask was supposed to be worn inside, but shots revealing the device were cut and it never made its way into canon. The sound of a hand being placed over a vacuum tube was used for the shot of Vader's helmet being lowered. Simple, yet effective. Since he had broken many prop rods during the making of Star Wars, fight choreographer Bob Anderson replaced David Prowse for the lightsaber duel. Since he was shorter than the bodybuilder, creative camera angles and shoe lifts were used to give the impression that Vader towered over Luke. It's also why many of the shots tend to focus on Hamill, as Anderson only wore the iconic mask when appearing in frame. All the main cast from the first film reprised their roles. Thanks to Kershner's insistence, each feels further fleshed out, from the Han-Leia romance, from Luke's struggle to understand the Force's greater mysteries. The audience connects with each subplot. Being the darkest of the original trilogy, Luke's next step into the larger world is fraught with difficulty. The adult Padawan learns well, but a life of moisture farming makes it difficult to apply his lessons in certain respects, the X-Wing scene being the best example. Luke's biggest test stems from his visit to the cave, which the greater canon would call the trial of self, or facing the mirror. A common hero's journey motif, the character faces his own inner darkness, coming to terms with what he sees. The cave is saturated with the dark side, creating apparitions based on an individual's own inner darkness. The cave easily manifests Luke's darkness into a reflection of Vader. The apparition doesn't make the first move, waiting for Luke to activate his weapon first. As Yoda warned Luke, the cave only contains what a person brings there. Luke is filled with anger and fear, plus he is armed with his father's lightsaber, prime conditions for a dark side nexus to feed. The cave's movements mirror Luke's, adding to the revelation that the Vader double has Luke's face under the mask. Not only does this show Luke that he could end up becoming another Vader if he gives into the dark side, but it foreshadows the twist ending. Technological issues prevented the original film's duel from being what Lucas originally envisioned. Although realistic from a Bladework standpoint, it was mildly boring on film. Kershner was able to present lightsaber combat in a more cinematic fashion, taking what was originally established and improving the technical mechanics. From blade rotoscoping to the saber choreography, everything looks better. Color is utilized excellently too, with red and blue shifting as the battle progresses, contrasting the saber's colors and physically representing the ongoing struggle between good and evil, or, in Luke's case, the struggle between light and dark. Smoke highlights the color, emphasizing the struggle, and adding a touch of mystique. The duel also provides Luke with his next Jedi tests, his trial of skill and his trial of flesh. In Legends, a Padawan passed these trials by defeating a skilled opponent in combat and enduring a grievous injury. Enduring the loss of his saber hand allows Luke to pass his trial of flesh. While he doesn't win the duel, surviving single combat against a Sith Lord who has killed many Jedi Knights with nothing more than a severed hand is worthy of a pass, even if Vader didn't fight at full skill until the end. The shot of him placing a second hand on his saber is where the flip occurs, the Dark Lord's way of saying, "Now I'll take you seriously." Vader's revelation was kept top secret before the release date, with only a handful of crew members knowing the details. The script even featured different dialogue, stating Obi-Wan killed Luke's father. From what I've gathered, only Lucas, Kershner, Hamill, and James Earl Jones knew, with the last one believing that Vader was lying. Dee Williams joined the ensemble cast as the suave, respectable scoundrel Lando Calrissian. Plays the role with the right amount of charm and guilt, making Han's friend likable and relatable. Even when he betrays everyone's favorite smuggler, the audience understand why he did so, humanizing Lando greatly. This makes his turn near the climax predictable, but of the good variety. A man can only be pushed so far. Lando was originally set to be a survivor of the Clone Wars, leading a legion of fellow clones. After that idea was passed over, he was set to be part of a family who reproduced only by cloning, an idea later introduced into the Legends continuity via an alien member of Luke's Jedi Praxium. Before Dee Williams was cast, Yaphet Kotto of Alien fame was offered the role, but he turned it down, citing that being killed off would make it difficult to find work.
Perhaps the draft he read included a different fate for the character, or he thought Fox was trying to typecast him following Alien's success.
While filming in London, Carrie Fisher rented a house from Eric Idle of Monty Python fame. One evening, Idle held a party and Fisher, Harrison Ford, and members of the Rolling Stones were in attendance. A potent liquor was served, and everyone stayed up most of the night drinking. Han and Leia's arrival at Cloud City were the first scenes filmed the following day, which explains why the characters were so giddy. Idle is said to be happy to have contributed to the final film in this manner. The Cloud City apartment scene was scripted differently. Originally, Han was to compliment Leia on her outfit in a flirtatious manner, followed by Leia teasing him before the pair kiss. Kershner filmed this version, but felt the scene wasn't playing right for the characters. In the end, he refilmed it entirely. While a minor delay, I feel it ultimately helped the final scene, as the original version doesn't sound like how Han and Leia would act as a couple at this point. It also feels similar to how Lucas wrote the Anakin-Padme relationship in the prequels, one of that trilogy's weaker aspects. Several scenes were trimmed, and others ended up on the cutting room floor after Lucas took control. These scenes include a longer conversation in the medical bay, which included more banter between Luke and Leia, a subplot involving Wampas entering Echo Base, which shows what Lucas meant by the original creature suit not working, General Veer's death, and Yoda instructing Luke on saber use. After watching these scenes, it's not hard to see why they were trimmed or deleted. Most slow the film's pacing, while others were hampered by technical limitations. Even though they are rough, it's nice they were included as extras. Empire debuted on June 20th, 1980, first playing in metro areas, as they had the only theaters capable of playing 70mm film. A wider 35mm release followed. While the initial investment had been risky for Lucas, it was recovered in 3 months and paid off several times over $200 million on an $18 million budget. As a show of gratitude, Lucas shared the profit with his employees, paying out over $5 million in bonuses, a rare act in Hollywood. The film was also a critical success, until this day is universally praised as the best film in the series, a sentiment I agree with. Like the rest of the trilogy, Empire was theatrically re-released in 1997 with enhanced special effects. Of the three, it seems to have the least polarizing changes: a longer journey into Cloud City, less claustrophobic halls, and other cosmic changes. The Wampa scene was also extended, with wide shots of the creature inserted. Technology had improved drastically since '79, with the movements feeling much more like a living creature. One more change came with the DVD release, as Lucas replaced Clive Rivel's Emperor with Ian McDiarmid for continuity purposes. The dialogue was also tweaked to show that Vader was hiding Luke's existence from his master for his own purposes.
As it is said in Legends, the Sith always betray one another.
Empire is my favorite film in the series. It upped the stakes from the first film while giving each returning character added depth. The directing and writing are top tier, the actors are likable, the cinematography and special effects are excellent, and John Williams' score combines it beautifully. I don't think there's anyone alive who doesn't want to swing a lightsaber while listening to the Imperial March. It's a film I've enjoyed watching for 20 years, and I'll continue to enjoy it until I'm as aged as Yoda.